Welcome everyone. My name is Jessica Rodriguez. I am the Data Science Institute Industry Engagement Officer. Welcome to our iCubed series. iCubed stands for Institute, Industry, and Innovation. These seminars connect our industry affiliates to our students and the larger Columbia community to explore topics at the forefront of industry. We invite data scientists, engineers, or researchers from our affiliates to give a talk about a recent project or case study. During these educational events, we encourage attendees to ask questions via the chat feature and the Q&A feature. So during the talk, if anything comes up and you want to pop in a question, please feel free. You don't have to wait until the very end, though we will have time at the end for Q&A. Today, we have three data scientists from Novartis joining us. We have Bharti Rai, VP Commercial Operations and Effectiveness, Insights and Analytics. We have Anik Bhattacharya, Associate Director of Advanced Analytics at Novartis, and Anuvrat Chaturvedi, and Associate Director. And please forgive my butchering of names, I apologize. And I turn it over to the Novartis team. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Jessica, for having us. And it's a pleasure actually to talk to the students and talk a little bit about what data science analytics looks like in the industry as you're practicing, and especially in pharmaceutical industry, where I would say that analytics teams have existed for years, but really the discipline of doing data science internally, getting good at it, has really emerged in the last few years. So today our plan is to talk about a few things. If we can move, Anuvrat. We can move again, just a disclaimer from Novartis. All right, so a few things we'll talk about today, and this is what I want to start with, right? Three main agenda topics. One is how data science fits into an overall company's business, running the day-to-day business, as well as trying to get really good at how you do sales, marketing, commercial, R&D, right, clinical, the whole business of producing medicines and marketing medicines. And how does data science fit in there? Why is it important? What is the role of it? How do companies look at it now? And there is a major transformation that's been going on for a number of years. So that's sort of topic one. And then the second topic is Anuvrat and Anik, right, who are data scientists on our team. We'll give you two examples and case studies to bring it to life for you. And then you'll see not only the data science aspects, but also how that has actually impacted our business. So with that, let me just, first go through a big picture context, right? Why should companies care, right, about data science? And there's a buzz going on that every company is saying we want to become a data-driven decision-making company, right? So what does that mean? Because a lot of business decisions in the past were taken by, let's say, sales or marketers based on experience, based on gut feel, right? Based on having marketed multiple brands or products in the past. And the reliance on what the data is telling you, how precise it is, how important it is, that's really emerged, I would say, in the last 10 years of pharma. So why should companies even focus on it? Because, it is core to becoming now a strategic asset in the company. Analytics and data science, I would say, used to be more support functions in the past. And when we say we're all on a transformation, it's really about making data science and ensuring that it powers pretty much everything we do in the company. So that's really when we say data-driven transformation, we talk about putting data science at the center of driving business decision-making. Now, why, every company wants to do this. It's proven that, there is, you perform better, you do better if you're driven by data and data science. But why do data-driven transformations fail? So there are a few things, right? One is businesses are typically good at their core capabilities, right? And in the case of healthcare, right, it's providing healthcare, it's developing medicines, and then it's bringing it to market, right, to the patients that need it. So the average business leader, it does not, doesn't know the details of the analytics and the data science, and can get very lost in the numbers and the details of it. So it's very important to distill down what the data science models are providing into key actionable recommendations for the business. And so that's the key thing. The second is just, skill sets may not be there. Healthcare is trying to attract this talent and really has successfully, done that in the last few years. But a lot of this, data science started off in other companies, whether it's tech or consumer, because they had to use it to survive and to get a competitive advantage. So, all right. So for our ambition, right, at Novartis is to be a front runner, a leader in the industry on how data science can power basically the DNA of the organization. And then how do we generate insights from all of this? And there are different stages of maturity, right? So it's about kind of starting with first the data foundation. As you all know, it has to be there if you need to do good data science. Having kind of descriptive models, reporting, KPIs, then moving to diagnostic, right? Analytics that tells you whatever it is that you're working on, why did it happen? Whether it's a business problem, a business performance, a business issue. And then you start going into predicting, right? Predicting a trend, predicting a better way to target, predicting how you can reach the right patient at the right time. And then really the top layer is being prescriptive, which means that your recommendations are almost gospel, right? And the belief in what data science is providing is just really, really high. So this is sort of the maturity scale that we look at, that we want to climb. All right. So then, how do you really become a front runner in the pack? As opposed to a company that does great data science, right? How do you go beyond great to data science being actionable and used to run the business? So there are a few things, right? One is there's obviously basic bedrocks that are needed around infrastructure and basic analytics, data management, consistent language across the enterprise. Then there's a lot of ways of working, right? How should a data science team work with a functional area that we are working with, right? Whether it's sales or marketing or even beyond, right? Finance, R&D, there's HR, right? Every area requires data science. So what's the efficient way of working? Then how do we embed the data science into the processes of these groups I talked about, right? So if finance does something, they have to produce a forecast, they have to look at how they're doing, how does and they have to make decisions on where to invest money. So how does data science actually embed in the financial business process, as an example, versus being something on the side, right? Versus being a model producing factory, right? We just have to connect it more and more into the real context behind what data science is powering. Transformative talent is a big thing, and this is why we're talking to you. We love, to really hire a diverse, I would say, set of folks that have pharma experience, non-pharma experience, early in their career, very experienced in their career, and again, we're in this journey to really build our best-in-class data science team. And we have many folks that are there already, and hopefully more to come. And then finally, right, our goal is that we change data science from a supporting function to a driving function, to a powering function, right? Where if we stand up and we say, this is the recommendation coming out of data science, the business listens, takes action on it, and then we measure, right? Because we're not always right. So self-learning, adjusting, and again, at the end of the day, it's all about decision-making. All right, so this is just an example, from one brand, right? So just maybe to step back a little bit, the business of pharma, right, is we make medicines and then we bring them to market. So we call one R&D and we call the other commercial, basically, right? How do you bring a medicine to the patients that need it? So our team works on commercial analytics and data science. And what you see here are just examples of what we have worked on to bring one brand to the right patients, again, at the right time, as well as drive brand commercial decision making. So Anuvrat and Anik will touch more on this in their very real examples. But just to give you a flavor of what we're talking about, right? There are key business questions that get answered by data science. For example, we have to segment our customers, right? How do they engage with us? What are the behaviors? There is forecasting, which is very financial related. Then there is performance of the brand. How are we doing? What's the activity? Can we, this is obviously basic reporting, but sometimes there's deeper dives that are needed on what is happening to performance and why. Then there is market research that now data science analytics has to work with to get deeper into the question of a why. Then we do a lot of analytics around patient journeys, because in certain medicine areas, right, in certain disease states, you might have a patient population that just never got diagnosed and got misdiagnosed, right? And it took them years and years and multiple doctors before they got the right diagnosis. So we do a lot of patient journey analysis to see what the experience of the patient is before they get on to the right medicine or before they get to the right doctor, and then see if we can shorten that time, right, to right diagnosis. And then, lots of additional predictive models that Anuvrat can talk about. So let's move to the next one. Okay, so we are also, in our quest to become really one of the most leading data science teams in the industry, we learn from other industries, right? So there are a lot of industries that are good at a lot of data science solutions, let's say. So these are just a few examples, so it becomes real for you. For example, recommendation engine, right? So someone like a Netflix, their recommender engine is really telling you which TV shows you'll like. You all know that, you're familiar with it, right? So we're trying to learn from the recommendation engine applied to pharma. Second is content marketing, right? So this is how we serve up the right content and messaging to the right customers that care about what we're saying, right? The examples you're familiar with would be Starbucks, eBay, you get emails from so many retailers. Half the time you don't open them, but then there's some content that really gets your attention, right? And there's a lot of research and analytics behind that. Churn loyalty is another example, right? So telecom companies, your cable companies, your credit card companies are famous for this. They do a lot of analysis on who is going to drop off, who's going to change telephone providers tomorrow, and then they will intervene with offers, and they'll give you 2 years free or whatever. So we learned from that as well. But it doesn't apply exactly like that to pharma, right? Because we're not in the business of like loyalty, right? The loyalty will come if our medicines are good, but to know why patients are dropping off or they're not adhering to their medications, what are the other factors, right? We can learn from other industries. And then pattern detection that financial services does a lot. And then, there's a lot of attribution and drivers of performance type of analytics that we also do in pharma. So I hope that brings it to life. Now, this is sort of one very, very high level example, and then Anuvrat is now going to go into more detail. But for the examples that I told you from other industries that we have learned from, this is what we can do in pharma, right? So there's traditional analytics, and then there's more futuristic. And then there's sort of static look at performance or how we run the business, versus more timely and automated, right? So those are the scales. So we've used a lot of these examples from other industries and actually have developed data science solutions that are now powering many of our business units. So again, these are just a few examples. So with that, let's move next. I will turn it over to Anuvrat. Maybe I'll take a pause if there are any questions now before we go deeper into the case studies, and then we'll definitely keep 10 minutes at the end for more questions as well.
So yes, we do have two questions. Does Novartis ask for PhDs for R&D data science positions?
I don't know if it's a hard and fast rule. I'm not sure, Anik, if you are aware of the requirements on the R&D side. Anik, you're on mute.
Bharti, this is not a hard and fast rule. So, but definitely means there are PhDs, there are masters who all work together for this. And on the data science positions, and also there are people from bioinformatics sides, those people also coming in and joining this space.
Great. And then our next question from Felix Morales. If levels of understanding differ among managers and business leaders, what communication strategies were pursued before, e.g. how frequently to report back and with what level of granularity in contrast to now?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So, I mean, I think the way to do that, right, from a communication perspective, honestly, is we don't have a data science team sitting off on the side producing solutions and models, right? They are embedded with the business, right? They work with them day in and day out. So that is the communication mechanism, right? The data scientists are sitting in the business is working with data scientists, both are learning from each other, right? And the business's data acumen increases and the data scientist's business acumen increases. And there's no other way to do it, right? Because models where it's sort of a team on the side, just producing models, really good at data science, but they don't really understand the business, then your data science solutions will not scale, will not fit the question, right? That needs to be addressed. So it's not like a formal communication, it's like part of how we work together.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's take just this one because it's in connection to your slide, and then we'll hold the next question until after the next set of presentations. What is the authoring automation in this context? Your last slide.
Which one? The previous slide?
Yes, I believe so. Nicolas asked this question. So he asked about authoring automation. Is that on the previous? Oh, here we go. Next to action.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is around, this I would say is really what consumer industries are good at, right? Which is, how do you make the content? And when we say content, we mean however you're engaging with that company, right? It could be via email, it could be online. You might be getting banners if you go online. You might be going to social media sites. So what we mean by that is really the act of getting really good at what content resonates with what customers. And this is all based on personas that exist out there. So you've got to really understand the customer insights and the segmentation really well, and then create personalized tactics. And then there is different cuts, right? So authoring automation is really, a lot of the automation of personalized message delivery, I would say, in the simplest terms.
Thank you so much. Okay.
So the question I heard was just to repeat that there's no hard and fast rule.
Yeah. That's basically the gist of it. Exactly. Thank you. No hard and fast rule, but let's take a pause on Q&A for a second and move on to the next part of the presentation, and we'll circle back. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Actually, I'd like to continue with the Q&A. So just asking one question to the audience. What do you think is the most common use of data science in this industry or any other industry? Can you answer via Q&A or chat probably? Let's hear from the audience.
Okay, so we're asking the student, the audience, what is the
most commonly used cases of data science in the industry? What do they think is most commonly used?
Yeah, So everybody, if you whoever wants to participate, pop it in the chat. Let us know what you think the most common use of data science is. Everybody got shy.
Yeah, that's 30 seconds. Yeah.
No, we got some answers. Okay, great.
We have
So
A/B testing. That's a good one.
yeah. Human behavior, A/B testing.
This is the company comes up with, yeah, very generic, but very true. Can we have one more? Come on, just one more. Yeah, quantitative decision making. So all good ones. And just to add to it, and A/B testing was a really good one, by the way. It's very commonly used across industries. Bharti talked about the journey from descriptive to predictive to prescriptive. The next section is going to be about predictive modeling and how industry, especially pharma industry, uses predictive modeling. And the next section, Anil will talk about prescriptive nature of things. So in this current example, I'll talk about a specific use case that we implemented to bring better results for patients, to reach them faster, sooner. Bharti also talked about how we want to reach patients where they are and when they need us the most. So this talks about the same principle in action. So MS is a very debilitating disease. If you think about MS, multiple sclerosis, it's a chronic disease. What it means is it doesn't go away with time. Chronic diseases are opposed to acute diseases. It continues with you. And it progresses, degenerates, and it leads to long-term neurodegeneration. The disease manifests itself in various forms. It starts with inflammation, but over time leads to neurodegeneration, which means you are more and more driven towards disability, towards being better, and to put it in layman's term. You have various forms of MS manifest. It manifests itself in various forms, leading to abnormal speech, fatigue, visual problems. So you can imagine the pain the patients have to go through. There are multiple disease modifying therapies, DMTs as we call them, in the market, but the reach for these DMTs is still less than ideal. What we wanted to do here was to identify patients who need these DMTs right now and to reach them. So we talk about predictive modeling to understand patients where they are and when they are in their journey. If you think about a chronic disease, you need interventions at various times, various points in the journey of a patient. You need intervention before diagnosis. It takes a long time for these diseases to get diagnosed. Even after a disease has been diagnosed, it takes a long time for a patient to be on the drug, on the right kind of drug that can help the patient. So you, being a pharmaceutical manufacturer, it is our responsibility to reach these patients where they need us the most, before pre-diagnosis, post-diagnosis, pre-treatment, and post-treatment, and to keep them on the therapy if that's the right choice for them. So there are multiple barriers in this industry. We want to look at all the barriers and identify if reaching them at the current point in time would be a good choice for these patients. In this current use case, what we did was we identified various points in the journey of patients. So patients who are early in their journey, patients who are on their first drug, patients who are on their second drug, patients who are on their third, fourth, fifth drugs, but they are going to switch off of their drugs. They are going to switch off their drug and they are going to probably be off drug or probably going to look for another treatment. And we wanted to reach these patients at the time when it matters most to them, which is right now. And we used about 8 years of rich clinical history of these patients using their comorbidities, which is essentially all the diseases the patient has had, all the procedures that have been performed on the patients, all the drugs the patient has taken over the last 8 years, all the diagnoses, all the different kinds of demographic variables that you may think of, age, location, general location, the kind of doctors the patient sees. And we ran multiple algorithms. You may be familiar with some of these algorithms, if not all of these algorithms. We ran logistic regression, ran forest, XGBoost, but the algorithm itself is not very pertinent to this discussion. So we used multiple data science techniques, multiple algorithms to find out who these patients are. And we wanted to reach these patients through various mechanisms. So this is one part of data science that we used in this project. And this is not where our work stops. So if you think about it, we identified patients who need our drug, but how do we reach them? And pharma as an industry is driven by a lot of rules and regulations because we want to protect our patients' privacy. So there is HIPAA and other compliance and regulatory laws in place that we have to think about. It is not like it's not like other industries where if you identify a candidate for your product, you reach that candidate directly. So we again then use multiple unsupervised learning or supervised learning techniques to identify patients who look similar to these patients we have identified. You reach these patients through multiple direct-to-consumer channels. You reach these patients also through the SCPs who is treating these patients. And pharma is a unique industry where customer and consumer are most of the times not the same person. You have the doctor who is the customer for our drugs, and we want to reach that doctor to activate the patient who is the consumer for our drug. And this project used both these channels to reach the patient and bring about a change in the life of that patient by exposing that patient to the benefits of the drug. So this was my 10 minutes overview of what we did with a predictive model. If there are any questions, I can take these questions.
Great. If anybody has any additional questions, please pop them in the Q&A. But for now, let's tackle the two that we have up. To bring a product from R&D to market can take 10 to 15 years with pharma business units. In your opinion, where do you see or foresee acceleration most prevalent impact at R&D, regulatory and market access, or distributions?
Bharti, would you like to take that?
Yeah, I would say R&D, and we have a pretty significant data science group in R&D that we don't know that much about, right? We don't work so closely with them because we're on the commercial side, but I know that from a Novartis perspective, the data science investments to bring some efficiency in the R&D process, right? And that whole timeline of however long it takes. There's been some serious work and a lot of strides in the R&D data science area.
Thank you. So we have two questions from Shruti. And one of them is one that's very popular for us is, what was the modality of the data? Survey data? Did you have RNA sequence data too? This is a question that comes up a lot for our students, especially when they're up for looking for jobs. They always often ask, not always, but they often ask, what kind of data are we working with?
So if you think about the kind of data we used in this particular project, we used structured patient claims data. Now, it appears as a structure to us, but when someone else who is working on the data starts on it, it is semi-structured. Semi-structured data converted to structured data for the past 8 years has been used for this particular use case. And answering the second part of the question, no, we did not use RNA sequencing for this. This was primarily speaking patient claims that tells us about the journey of the patient through the lens of prescriptions, diagnosis, procedures that have been performed on the patient.
Wonderful. Thank you. This question, is Novartis involved in orphan disease R&D? And you're always, feel free to skip if you can't answer, but yes, if you can, feel free.
So let me try to answer this. Yes, because we have got so many areas where we do R&D, and definitely one of them is orphan disease areas, right? And we have some breakthrough treatments for the orphan diseases, which has come live in market, and where means we extended the lives of uh, the kids with these very rare diseases by substantially.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Felix Morales asked, over 250K patients, any pointers as to sourcing / getting the data sets for your analysis given HIPAA?
I would love to share with you, but I cannot. So these are.
We understand, no worries.
Yeah, but I think so that's a good question, right? So any analysis we do in pharma for commercial purposes does not preserves the HIPAA rules, right? We don't look at identified patient information. We're not allowed to. So anything we work with is de-identified patient information if we're doing a patient level analysis, right? And when we say de-identified, it is very securely managed by third-party providers that do the de-identification process, give the data to us, and then we work with it. So there's strong rules and governance around that.
That all takes place in a secure environment. We don't even collect the data. So we are thinking about 250,000 patients. We do not know who these patients are. We don't know much about these patients except for what their general age is or general geography is. Even the geography is restricted, so much so that we do not even know their exact zip codes. So it's all very protected.
So for patient analysis, then, right? It's not. It's not like the consumer industry where you sign on to Amazon and they know your name, address, and they follow you through your whole history, right? With pharma, obviously, it's a more difficult problem statement, and we can find trends in the patient information. We can understand the patient journey in groups and cohorts, but obviously we cannot target specific patients, and we don't know who they are anyways. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. No, that explains it for us. Wonderful. Okay, so that actually does answer the question. I agree, it does. Okay, so we can move on to our third part of our presentation today with Anik.
Thank you. Okay, so Anuvrat, and just go to the next slide. I'll be talking about mainly today on the decision engines and what kind of recommendation engines or decision engines gets developed in pharma industry, right? So now, before we even get into there, we call it means we pharma as an industry, right? We are not only into developing drugs or distributions of those, but also at the same time educate people on what the drug or the medicine can do, right? And there are many questions once a medicine comes out in the market. There are many questions that, how safe is it? Whether means how efficacious is it versus competitors? And how do we literally means at the end of the day, if you see that this is also a part of the industry itself to educate the not only the customers but also the consumers as well, that hey, what this drug has. And definitely one of the things that we are trying to do in Novartis is to figure out that, hey, how do we push or how do we send this information to the doctors so that they get the information they are looking for in a timely manner, and we are not overwhelming them with everything about that, but also the portion that they are looking for, right? And how frequently we connect with them. So that is what we do in our decision engine. And it literally uses some deep learning techniques to go ahead and predict what is the most valuable technique. So the right content to the right customer at the right time with the right cadence. So that is what is a decision engine for us. So Anuvrat, if you can move to the next slide. So why means how do we do it, right? So that we can reach out to this patient. So if we educate the HCPs or the doctors and also be able to educate the patients what will happen is that they can quickly get diagnosed, get the proper medication that is needed. So what we try to do here is basically 4 things. I will say that we go ahead and try to hyper-personalize the promotions so that we only are providing the information that the HCP is looking for, not a hell lot of content that they possibly don't need. Then definitely look into the entire data landscape and understand that by the life cycle, how these promotional channels, how the promotional channels act for each doctor. Right? Someone may not be even using emails. So I do not want to definitely send some information through an email to that person. Then, and eventually get into the different channels through which we can connect or share this information with the doctors to bring them in a omni-channel framework so that we are reaching them with the right channel as well. Finally, I think anything that we'll have to do, we'll have to think about that sustainability of that and how automated it can be so that we can learn from each and every thing that is happening and automate accordingly. So Anuvrat, move to the next slide. So any kind of omni-channel framework, right? When we talk about an omni-channel kind of a recommendation system. So we basically, these are the 5 pillars that we in Novartis take care of. Definitely, a recommendation system is only good when we have automated data marts. And without our automated data marts, it's very difficult for any kind of recommendation system to work out. So we bring all of this data into our AWS system. We bring all this information together and create the automated data mart, a rolling automated data mart, on top of which the decision engines can go ahead and sit. So we use some deep learning decision engines with probabilistic classifiers as well. So at the end of the day, this is going ahead and recommending that, okay, for this HCP, send this kind of an information, a safety message through this channel. So we go through a list of such recommendations and try to push out the recommendation that he is going to interact most with. Now, definitely, they're not everything we know about them, right? So we definitely push multivariate tests out there, the A/B testing, someone of you said, we push our A/B testing on the content to figure out that, hey, what each HCP needs and what they are resonating with. And that is the 3rd part. The 4th part definitely is recommendations are great, but how do you execute on the recommendations, right? So there are different ways of automation that we bring in. So like bringing in the different solutions like marketing cloud solutions out there to be able to act upon this recommendation that is coming up from the decision engine. And finally, for anything that you do, if it has to be a reinforced learning thing, you have to go ahead and measure and learn with each and every touch that you make. So Anuvrat, towards the next slide. Okay, I will show you some interesting results of what came up when we started with this recommendation engines. So what we did was we went ahead and started recommending for both our sales specialists to go ahead and act upon it, and also on our digital space to act upon these recommendations. And I will take 2 examples here. One is when a sales specialist was going ahead and adhering to the recommendations in the areas, we always saw there is a higher HCP adoption for the drug and a higher depth that is coming out. That eventually means that information that we are sending out to them based on this decision engine is resonating with them. And the second thing, On the digital space, I will take the example of home office emails or the emails that we send out. So the emails, we kept a kind of a pre-post always as a measurement, and the A/B test and control groups. And what we saw eventually that there is more engagement in the emails when you are pushing it through our recommendation engine. So I think I will stop there to the next slide. Okay, so I will re-articulate this again, that this kind of a decision engine, it's very important to have a proper data foundation. And it is very important to have this data decision engine connected to our different execution engines so that we can act upon this in an automated fashion and eventually go towards be able to provide the information that the HCP is looking for or the consumer is looking for. So I will stop with that and see any questions that we can answer specific to this, or maybe in any general questions that.
If anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A. And while we wait for those, I have some questions that I know come up for our students as they get to know our industry affiliates and as they go out and learn about how industry works with data science. A frequently asked question is, what would make a strong candidate for your team at Novartis? What classes would you, or skill sets would you encourage our students to be prepared with?
Okay, let me try to take that. Okay, so what definitely is going to be important is that, look, data science is when you see, these are basically skills that you learn. So definitely there are two elements that works together here: the knowledge about pharma and the decision or the data science elements. So definitely we expect you to know the decision, the data science elements, mostly around how the data can be automated, the different statistical modules that gets used, the different kind of nonlinear models, nonlinear techniques that gets used in the industry. Get the basic of that right. Once you come into Novartis, will teach you the pharma part.
So one thing that I'd like to add on the data science side is to remember that data science is applied statistics. So don't forget the applied part of it. Whenever you are learning about it, whenever you are implementing on it, always remember the use case, how we are going to use what you are going to design. And that execution is very important when it comes to industry.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, our students get wonderful practice at the applications portion of this during their capstone project in their third semester. So I'm glad that they are able to do that. That's wonderful. Another question that frequently comes up from our students is, what would a typical day for a data scientist look like on one of your teams?
Anuvrat and Anik, best people to answer that question.
Okay.
What is your typical day?
Okay, so I think I will start, and Anuvrat, you can add to it. So we definitely spend our time in two areas mostly. One is trying to go ahead and resonate with the different business areas to see that where the problems are and co-create a solution that may be at a theoretical level. That how can we go ahead and attack that problem that exists. That it needs both our data science approaches and the business knowledge out there. So that is what it gets co-created. And then definitely once we have something, let's go ahead and try different algorithms, because one algorithm or one kind of thing is not going to work out. And it may happen that in areas, in parts of the solution, it can work out. One algorithm will work out, another algorithm is going to work out for other parts. So how do you go ahead and balance this and come up with this? And eventually, while you try to do that, keeping in mind that how we can do it in scale, right? Because this solution that we will be deriving needs to be applied to other areas as well. So how can you really scale this up? So this is what are the two parts of our role in data science as a data scientist here. And definitely we talk, the data science teams talk, debate a lot about what the methodologies to be used, how to solve for it. So Anuvrat, anything you want to add?
Two things, one functional and one very general. So the functional thing being that when we are working with in our capacity, we are always working with people who are not data scientists. We are working with marketeers, people from the field who are representatives, right? We are working with other people who are also data scientists, some people who are analysts, right? So you have to remember that you are catering to a large audience, a large variety of audience. So when you talk to someone, you talk to them at their own level, and this is done daily. You are every single day you are meeting with people who are experts in areas you are not an expert at, and the important thing is to remember to learn from them so that you the next time you meet you have a topic to discuss. And another thing, the general thing I wanted to talk about was to remember that you are a data scientist but you are a person. So remember that, and you take care of your mental health. That is very important at Novartis. You want to grow as a individual, you want to grow in your career, fine, but you also want to grow as an individual, and you want to keep your mental health at the highest level, and your personal professional life should work well together. That's what we value at Novartis the most, at least according to me.
No, that's wonderful to hear. That's wonderful to hear. These are the kind of insights that we're looking for here. That's wonderful to hear about Novartis's culture in that way. We have a question from one of our students or participants. With reference to the engagement increase based on recommendation engine, A, did you cluster the engagement across age groups? Or B, is the result the same across age groups? Are you able to answer this?
Yes, so let me try to answer that. So while you push a A/B test, right? So you definitely means have a control pool where there is a segment within the control pool where you try to balance this by age group, right? And when we looked into the results and did a deep dive, right? So there was directionally some differences between age groups, but those were not statistically significant. So definitely we always look for any kind of statistical significance there before commenting out that, okay, this age group resonates more with this kind of a solution versus something else. And maybe as this goes on and we keep on looking at it regularly, one time it may come up that it is coming up statistically significant.
Wonderful, thank you. I was muted. I muted myself. Thank you so much. So we know that the PhD is not required, but is it preferred? One of our students is asking, and if they don't have a PhD, do you recommend for students who are interested in pharma, data science, to take some biology classes?
Let me try to answer that. It's not a hard and fast kind of
Right.
biology class. So if you are interested in that area, means definitely choose to take a biology class. But for getting into Novartis, right, biology is not hard and fast for in data science areas in roles.
Thank you so much. Well, we don't seem to have any more questions in the Q&A. One thing that I do like to ask our participants whenever we are fortunate enough to have some time to squeeze this in is to ask about your background and your routes to being data scientists. And if you guys could just let us know a little bit about how you ended up being a data scientist at Novartis.
So let me start by first caveating that I'm not a data scientist, but I do lead the whole, insights, data analytics area from a leadership strategic guidance perspective, right? So, and this is the interesting thing, right? You need, like, to grow in this space, you need someone who who doesn't necessarily need to do data science, right? Depending on how you're organized in the company. But you definitely need to know, as Anuvrat and Anik were saying, is the business implications of your data science work, right? So you can talk to it, you can mine the insights, the recommendations, and then, you know, different paths, right? So mine is not a data science path to growth. It is actually, you know, everything from strategy to, I started my career in strategy and consulting, then went on to business process reengineering. It was a big buzzword, you know, like 20 years ago. Then did a lot of big public sector projects, actually, where it was all around how do we make public sector and state government more efficient. And it had everything from people, process issues, training, technology issues, right? Customer service, everything. And then after that, I moved into pharma. And there I did a lot of internal strategy consulting, like on the commercial side, you know, how do you grow a business? How do we get better? What are opportunities for future growth? And then that led to what we call basically commercial operations. So it's a lot of sales operations, marketing operations. That led to analytics. And then analytics led to data, because you can't really do analytics without good data. And, you know, the data infrastructure was a big mess. So I kind of moved roles every 2-3 years, even if I didn't move companies. That's really how I so not a traditional data scientist. What about you, Anik?
So I am more like opposite, Bharti. So it's more like I am a master's in statistics and OR, right? I have 2 masters out there. So I'm not a PhD, first of all. So what happened was so the days when I studied statistics or OR, so those days this data science was not the buzz term, right? So, and usually I prefer to call myself a statistician more than a data scientist. And eventually I always wanted to be since I studied this for quite some time, right? So I always wanted to be in this area. And I literally love equations more than anything else. So that is how I I started my career with Hewlett Packard, right? So then I spent some time there doing the analytics out there. And then eventually, once I saw that there is a opportunity in Novartis, and always I wanted to be associated with a pharma company, because that is where, if you can bring these things in, you really has the capability to reach or touch so many lives that really matters. And then from that point onwards, I have always been a data scientist or a statistician, trying to help different section of the businesses in the pharma sector.
But I have to say, Anik, you, at least here, you are like the exception. No. Most careers in this field are not linear. Most careers go, in one field. Most careers probably path is to some extent. And mine started with CS, with marketing consulting, then sales consulting, did some time in iQVIA, but I have always been in pharma, moved to Novartis in analytics, then joined the data science team. So data science, I've always been a maths person, but not a statistician like Anik is. So you'll see that there's a lot of variety even among the panel here. So there are various paths, and the paths do not have to be linear.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes. So we have one more question. What kind of